County Board meeting of January 19th to order. And I would like to make a comment before our moment of silence and our pledge. I just want to speak to, in regards to our nation and those continuing to grapple with ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we remember that nearly 400,000 Americans, including some of our own 65,000 residents of Sherburne County and nearly 6,000 Minnesotans who have lost their lives to COVID-19. And we hold especially close in our hearts the families and the friends who are mourning the passing of these individuals. We also remember the tremendous economic and social toll this pandemic has taken on our communities, our schools, and our families, and our local businesses as well. We know these sacrifices are significant, but necessary to finally defeat the COVID-19 virus. And we thank our public health and medical professionals for all that they are doing to treat and now combat this pandemic scourge, including efforts now underway to administer vaccinations to our critical workers, our educators, and the most vulnerable and the elderly. And for our nation and all Americans as we struggle to maintain our democratic ideals of self-governance and peaceful transition of political power, we remember those who have been injured or lost their lives in the recent domestic political unrest. And we continue to hold close in our hearts our armed forces who protect our nation from external threats and enemies. And for the diverse fabric of peoples and cultures that make up this unique and special American tapestry. Following yesterday's holiday celebration of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we recognize that much work and much healing remains if we are to realize that powerful dream bespoken by Dr. King of an America truly united and genuinely equal. With that, I'd like us to arise for a moment of silence, followed by the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time then I'd like to move the approval of the regular meeting proposed agenda. Bruce, did you have any changes or deletions or updates?
Thank you, Chair Danielowski. With the board's permission, county staff would like to add to the workshop a Human Resources Department overview. We've been scheduling departments periodically just to give you a non-budgetary overview. And given the light load of the workshop, if it's the board's permission, then Tammy will do that today.
Perfect, thank you. Also, I just want to make a brief announcement that the public comment period will be allowed for anybody that's here to speak to the Lord's application will be allowed on item 5.3. So if you're here to speak to that, you can do it at that period of time. With that, then, if there are no other deletions or additions to our agenda, I would be looking for a motion to approve.
I'll move the amended agenda, Madam Chair.
Motion made by Commissioner Smeezing.
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Phobie. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Moving on now to our consent agenda. Everybody had a chance to review consent agenda. We'll be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Motion made by Commissioner Dolan, seconded by Commissioner Brandt. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. All right, moving on to our announcements. Any announcements at this time?
Thank you, Chair Danielowski. Just a couple of announcements. First of all, there's been a lot of discussion regarding vaccinations, and we will discuss it greater at the community health portion of the agenda. Amanda will go over what we know about the state-run vaccination clinics. We continue at the local level with those that we are authorized to conduct. And so today there is a vaccination clinic for those who are on the 1A list. Approximately 190 vaccinations. All slots are full for today. So we continue at the local level with our clinics, and we'll work obviously to coordinate the state clinics, and Amanda will give you more information in a few minutes. Second is just to note that the legislative session is underway. We did get a request over the weekend for a person to testify this morning at the technical corrections discussion of the bonding bill from last year. So the county engineer is doing that since it happens during the same time of the board meeting. It's just a technical corrections. It's not a decision to be made, but we'll keep you updated as things start moving with the legislative agenda, both for our priority projects as well as making sure the bonding project from last year is solvent. With that, that would end announcements for right now.
All right, thank you. At this time, we will have our open forum. Anybody wishing to address the board at this time? Is there anybody, Keisha, not here for the Lord's project?
There is nobody signed up, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to our regular agenda. Looking now, we're going to receive an update from the Farm Friends Barn. Jean. Yep, please go to the podium. Welcome. Ooh, you brought an entourage.
Oh, she's springing things on
This
me.
is our new person.
So she gets to speak first. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm just here because I missed all of you.
Familiar with that podium, aren't you?
Yes, I want to take it home. I saw Jean at the farmer's market last summer, and I said, you know, I need a project, and this is it. And so I haven't really done a whole lot yet, but I did some painting on the barn this summer, and I will be helping with some budgeting issues, not issues, budgeting, and also hopefully writing some grants as they become available. So it's a good project.
It's good to see you.
Yes. And Jean, you definitely did find a very valuable asset to join your group. Gina.
Good morning, Commissioner Danielowski and board members. Jean has a lot of updates to share. It's frankly pretty inspiring, all that the Farm Friends Barn Committee and their team of volunteers has accomplished over the last year. So we at Parks and Public Works have been happy to partner with them on a few initiatives. Their prairie restoration on the campus of the Farm Friends Barn last fall, our Public Works crew was able to help with the site prep, which was really fantastic. So it was kind of a three-way partnership with the Soil and Water Conservation District, Farm Friends Barn, and the county. And then with our trail project that will be installed at the History Center and to Oak Savannah Park to provide ADA compliance to the Fox House. That trail will also extend south to the Farm Friends Barn campus, so it will connect all three sites. And then we're also working with them on a tree planting initiative to restore what was disturbed when the barn was moved in. And that'll segue into Jean's long list of updates, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're ready, Jean.
Wow, I have great people,
You do.
and we're getting more of them. So good morning. I'm really excited to give you guys a really cool update. So as you can see, we have Mary Jo on board, which is going to be a true blessing, and she does more than paint. She also tears down buildings. And I have a picture of it. And then, of course,
Probably be therapy.
she's also a pusher and a shaker, so don't let her kid you. We also have, people have been coming forward and offering some of their employment services, such as we recently had a gal that come forward, and she works out of it's a Egg Precision Company in Iowa, and she does their marketing for them. She is a resident of Becker and Teleworks, and she is going to come on board and do our marketing for the barn. And that's huge, because we're lacking in that area, such as Facebook and some of those Twitters and all that kind of stuff, whatever. So she's coming on board. The things that we've been doing, we had a really, really good fall, winter, which enabled us to do some work at the barn. We did tear down a building, and yes, Mary Jo was there. We tore down, and it was an old farm structure on property from a large potato grower called R.D. Offit. They allowed us to go on and tear down the structure because the siding on that building matched the siding on our barn. So we were able to secure all three sides with the siding. We had a building inspection, which we had to do a few more things, so we've corrected those. I have a call in now. I'm hoping that we'll get our final okay on that. Everything's been secured, closed up. I had the honor of giving Dan Weber a key to the barn this morning. It's locked. We put siding over where the new milk house will be built, hopefully this year. It looks great. It really looks, if you look at the before and after pictures, while it seems like a long time, we've really moved forward with this. A couple other things that have come up is, for about 6 years, I've been kind of outreaching to people looking for some cupolas that maybe have some significant value that we can put on the barn. As years ago, there were cupolas, there was 2 of them on there. Recently, a good friend of mine purchased an old farm site here in Elk River. And there is a cupola on the dairy barn side of the building. And we're working together. He's going to donate that cupola to put on our barn. And that farm site is the Moldenauer piece. Hopefully some of you know about that site. Anyway, it's the farm that's right down across from the Hulton site where it used to be. So that's quite notable. We, however, are not the history center or a preservation place. All donations will not state anything about us preserving it. We're not that, but pleased to be able to get the Moldenauer cupola. So that'll be a really nice thing to capture. Probably the most exciting thing for me was we have electricity in the barn, and the day that we got the electricity, Jean was flipping on and off the lights. You know, I mean, I even went back there that first night, and I wanted to see the lights on in the dark. So a milestone, but a big one in my mind. So with that, we do have some opportunities. A couple other barns have come up that if we want to salvage some of this stuff. The one There's one in San Diego. It was over a 130-year-old Century Farm. They're going to be tearing down their barn. And some of the windows from that barn will go in our barn. So overall, we've not really spent a whole lot of money because we have a lot of volunteers and we have a lot of connections, and people are offering things for us, such as wood and windows now. And as far as the expenses on the barn, it was 20 for the move, which somebody donated. It was 20 for the cement. We probably put about 35,000 into it, all through donations. The whole idea of the barn was not to take loans out. So while it's going along slowly, our mission is to not have any loans. So one last thing, I just have a question for the commissioners, and it is, are you ready for a square dance? Because it is coming to a barn near you.
Spoken like someone who's never seen me dance.
So, and Tim, you walked right into that one.
Yeah, I did, usually do.
Because I really would love to have you come out to the barn, and if it's a square dance, we'll be happy. We'll be happy.
Tell me
to
when
see.
and I'll be there, Gene.
So, trust me, one's in the works. So it'll be a great year. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Jean? No?
Just thanks for all the work, and I look forward to a square dance.
Oh, good. So Tim and Lisa, there will be a contest on best outfit.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Yeah, I think we'd love to. We can all channel our elementary bi-ed days where you did have the square dancing
Great.
part, so we all learned it. So yes, that would be awesome. I would totally love to be involved in a square dance.
Well, it's going to happen, so thank you all.
And I just wanted to also this is a true testament to a person who had a vision and a dream and started working on it. And this is how you can get involved in your county and your community and what's important to you. And you are keeping some history, even though you're not acknowledging it as history, but it is. We are an ag county, and I think it's great that you have worked so hard. And even at great, when everybody, I'm sure when you first said it, looked at you like you were, really?
They still do.
But you persevere on, and we want to thank you for that. It's going to be awesome, and it's due to you and your great group of volunteers and people that are believing in what you're seeing.
Well,
So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
All
Gene.
right. All right, moving.
Chair
Yes.
Danielowski, if I could just add on to what you said. As Jean was talking, I was reminded of the family that donated the land to the county decades ago now, and I just wanted to remind everybody about Bill and Margaret Cox and their dream and vision for the property. And I just want to give due credit to Jean for helping that dream to come to fruition and having some sort of agricultural education opportunity on the property. So I just wanted to thank her for that because they were a special couple. So thank you.
Yes, they were. Thank you, Gina. All right, moving on then, next item on our agenda is to consider the preliminary and final plat for the TR Estates. Nancy, hi.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, all of this is recommendations from the December 17th Planning Advisory Commission, where the public hearings were held. So that first item, property owners is Ted Schulte, requesting preliminary and final simple plat approval. This is 3 lots in San Diego Township on 40 acres in the agricultural district. Planning Commission recommended approval with the 5 conditions that are listed in your packet.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'll motion approval with the 5 conditions.
Motion made by Commissioner Smeezing,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Dolan. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. All right, moving on to our next item is the consider an application for interim use permit for the activity requiring rural isolation for James and Carrie Lorge. Nancy. Oh, at this time, Bruce, do you want to speak to, or do you want Nancy to give her update first?
Madam Chair, with the board's permission, I think Nancy, staff should go first.
Okay.
If the attorney has anything to add, and then
Perfect.
I can talk about the public comment section.
All right, thank you. Okay, Nancy, thank you.
Okay, so I think you're probably all a little bit familiar with this one. The Planning Commission did recommend approval with 16 conditions and the findings of fact that are listed in your packet. At the meeting, there was a considerable discussion, and if you watch the public hearing, there was several letters of opposition that were presented, and the applicant was on site to answer any questions. One of the conditions the Planning Commission put forth was condition 16, where they said there would be a 2-year review, and there was some discussion on it, and I had a couple of questions, and it wasn't real clear to me what they wanted with that 2-year review. Staff was a little bit uncomfortable with the uncertainty of some of the things in the application, and I in particular wondered about there's no supervision out on the site or anyone overseeing, the people who are coming and going. So staff is presenting an amendment to that 16, and there's also an amendment to 12 that kind of goes along with that. Mark Schneider was our planner, worked with the applicant on this project, and he made Mr. Large aware of the amendment that we're putting forth. He does object to that, and Mark was able to give him some reasonings why we thought that it'd be appropriate. This is an IUP, and one of the main reasons we went to IUPs rather than conditional use permits is you can have an expiration date. Since there was opposition and this is kind of an unknown use that we haven't seen before. And I don't really ever recall any IUP where there's no supervision on site or anyone checking who's coming and going. So that's one reason we're putting forth the expiration of the IUP within 2 years. And after that, the applicant, if things are going good, that does give the opportunity for staff and the applicant to see how the conditions worked and make modifications. So that's just a little bit explanation of why we were putting that forward. Any questions at this time?
Any questions for Nancy at this time before we move on to Tim? Seeing none. Tim? Comments?
Madam Chair, the only thing I wanted to add on the reason for the suggested change for condition 16, and I think it was part to try to address what was a little looser condition coming out of the Planning Commission, that the ordinance requires that there be a date certain for an end to an interim use permit. An interim use permit, by its very definition and nature, is meant to be temporary, not permanent. Part of this, as Nancy said, was this is a unique use. I know the applicant has submitted some additional information through the county administrator, and I think the applicant has admitted that the application itself created some confusion, and some of the discussion at the Planning Commission created some confusion. Frankly, it was a loosely defined proposal by the applicant. And so part of the reason staff came up with condition 16 was to say, assuming the applicant can meet, the board finds that the applicant meets the condition or the findings required for an IUP, let's do this on a trial basis and see how it works. But given the limited information we received from the applicant, and given the need to find a termination date, we felt this met the Planning Commission's recommendation and the ordinance requirements. I know that there is also a question out there about the adequacy of the public hearing notice. It was adequate from a statutory standpoint. It gave notice of the date, time, place, gave notice of what was being discussed, and so on. I understand that there was some confusion about how comments would be received. in the context of a pandemic, we're not doing these as we typically would, but it did meet statutory requirements. Having said that, you probably have two options today. One is, given that the applicant has submitted additional information, given that there are folks who would like to speak, and I understand the board's prepared to listen to those comments today, you could take those comments, take the applicant's additional information, and act on those today. Again, because the public hearing process was sufficient. You could also send it back to the Planning Commission, given that the applicant wants to provide additional information, given that the public doesn't feel that they were able to address the Planning Commission in the manner that they would have preferred. Having said that, and I think Nancy and Mark can speak to this better, we do run into a 60-day issue. If you did that, we have time for the Planning Commission meeting, but we probably don't have time then to come back to this board and still meet the required deadline. We can work with the applicant and see if they'll agree to extend it another 30 days. If they don't, that process would require a special meeting. So I just wanted to put those out there. You do have that option. On the other hand, the applicant has submitted their information. The public is here. You could also take additional testimony today and act today.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Madam Chair.
Questions for Tim?
Madam Chair, quick question. Tim, you mentioned the date requirement for an IUP, and I should know this, but I don't. Condition number 12, does a date certain mean a specific time period, or does condition number 12 before the red line, which as long as they own the property, is that sufficient statutorily?
So, yes, under our ordinance, it simply says define a date certain when it will terminate or an event.
Right, okay.
So we often use termination based on ownership change. In the unique context of what is being proposed here, staff felt a date certain helped us address some of the concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Any other chairs?
as long as we got Tim going here, I have a question on number 12. The county, no, hold it. It's the one on insurance. I got. Okay, the applicant shall maintain, it's 13, the applicant shall maintain proper business liability insurance and provide a copy. Have we done that with other businesses? And define adequate.
I have to defer to Nancy on that, but I think we do it for example, gravel pits and so on. Certain uses that might create a hazard, we sometimes will require insurance without specifying exactly the amount. I think we did it with, or it was proposed at least with the gun range we had recently.
We used to do it on almost everything, but as Tim mentions, there are just some that we do that with now.
Well, my concern is if there is an issue, and who's going to define adequate, and if we make it a condition, then if we didn't force them to have what would be determined to be adequate insurance, would the liability fall back to the county? Could it?
I'm not particularly concerned about the county being liable, just because we set a condition, given the nature of this use, that we require some business liability insurance. As a practical matter, almost all businesses will carry some commercial liability insurance. We simply want to see it in place here. And I'm not concerned about that coming back on the county if, for example, it lapsed and we didn't notice. That's something we can follow up on, but I'm not particularly concerned about that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, since we're on that kind of line of thought, condition 11 kind of also plays to that. How do we define it? It's excessive noise, glare, odors, traffic, nuisance. People sitting in the audience today might have one definition. County staff might have another definition. What are we going to use? What standard are we going to use to hold a business to?
That condition is essentially straight out of our ordinance.
Yeah.
It requires you to find that the use will not create a nuisance. Typically, nuisance is a fuzzy legal concept in the sense where it prevents other people from enjoying the use of their property. in a stricter sense than just it's bothersome.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just to add to that, as far as noise, it is a hard one to monitor, but in certain situations, we have done noise testing, if that's the only option to figure that out. One other thing I wanted to mention is, to answer Commissioner Schmeezing's question on the insurance, that is a requirement on the rural isolation IUP. So that is a condition that is required there. Mark, let me know that.
Okay, and that's fine, but I think at some point, we probably want to review it and just make sure that when we say adequate, that should mean something. We should define that, so that's, I'm fine with it for now, but I think that's a spot where we could be vulnerable, ultimately.
Any other questions for Kim or Nancy?
Just, Madam Chair, spectators. Expectations for how many spectators? Are people going to go and watch this occur, or?
I could have Mark address this a little further. What I understand is that was a goal in the future. I don't believe that that's something that's allowed with what it got pared down to.
Okay, so it would not be a spectator.
And he did talk about other activities where there would be people there, and he was told that he would have to apply for another occasional special event or amend the IUP for that.
I read that. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Yep, okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, then we'll move on to the citizens portion. And Bruce, do you want to speak to why we are hearing comment now?
Thank you, Chair Danielowski. Yes, Sherburne County Administrative Policy regarding County Board Agenda Development and Review Process, item C under Citizens, does allow the board chair at the chair's discretion to request public input on issues that are included as part of the agenda, i.e. not just open forum. In this particular case, although the public hearing held in front of the Planning Commission was deemed sufficient, there was enough ambiguity with COVID-19 restrictions that it seemed prudent to recommend that if folks wanted to speak on this item at this time, they be allowed, although this is not a recitation of the public hearing or a new formal public hearing. Board policy has the following conditions. Persons desiring to speak may only speak if acknowledged by the board chair. All remarks shall be addressed to the county board as a whole, not to any specific board member or to any person who is not a member of the county board. Item 2 is comments are limited to a period of 3 minutes, although the chair does have discretion to grant additional time if needed. We will keep the 3-minute timer between Keisha and I. Number 3, copies of any written materials must be provided to the county board members, the county administrator and the county attorney, and to any media present. Also, handouts that are provided at the meeting today do become public record and part of the Government Data Practices Act. They are not subject to privacy. Finally, last couple items, if there are a number of individuals present to speak on the same topic, persons are to sign up prior to speaking, and Keisha has the sign-up list. Also, they're encouraged to designate a spokesperson as opposed to same comment over and over. Last 2 items, board members are to listen to the comments, are not to engage in discussion, but there can be additional questions if it gains a more thorough understanding of concerns, suggestions, or requests. And finally, disruptive and/or disrespectful behavior is not to be allowed.
All right, thank you. I just too wanted to make sure that I understand that the public hearing was held at Planning Commission, but due to COVID and the factor of the amount of people that had reached out to contact me in regards to not feeling they understood the whole process and their participation in it clearly enough that I, for one, never want to see any one of our public not feel they've had the ability to interact in a decision that is getting ready to affect their quality of life as well. So, all right, starting out then, Keisha, do you want to start with the first person?
Yes, first we have Jim Fairlack from Elk River.
I guess I'll take the mask off if that's all right. My glasses have a propensity to fog up.
We understand.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Jim Furlock is my name. I live at 22898 147th Street. I've lived there with my wife for 36 years, and I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this meeting. In regard to the large request for an IUP permit to operate a physical training obstacle confidence course. I use these terms because this is the way the petitioner described his proposal in his request for an IUP. He stated, think military training. I was in the military, in the Air Force, as a matter of fact, from 1967 to 1974. Not a good time to be in, but some of those things we didn't have a choice about. I ran an obstacle course in basic training. In officers training, I ran 2 more times what was called a confidence course. It's the same course, but in the officers training, nobody's cussing at you or calling you names, but they're still screaming and yelling at you. This was never, in all the 4 times I ran the courses, they were never a quiet activity. It was just the opposite. There's shouts of encouragement, discouragement, insults, a rousing cheer for the last person to finish the course, and a barrage of insults and dressing down for anyone that failed to finish. Just a lot of hooting and hollering, and with our house, the house my wife and I live in, it's less than 500 feet from the lot line of the large property. We would hear every word, especially at night, the way sound travels out there. This would be especially true in the summer when we enjoy sleeping with our windows open and giving that air conditioner a rest. Before the Planning Commission meeting of December 17th, 2020, the surrounding neighbors wrote letters of concern to members of the commission and to the Zoning and Planning Office. It appears as though the staff shared these letters with the petitioners even before the Planning Commission's meeting. I would compare this with taking a quiz and knowing all the questions beforehand. The petitioner responded to the staff, citing the difference in the distances of the writers of the letters to the large property. He stated, Bob Hammer lives 0.62 miles away. McFarland lives 2.7 miles. Statton's live 0.34, and the large house is 0.38 miles away. But guess what? There was no mention made of my letter or the location of my house. My house is less than 500 feet. And I say it's less because this is a very conservative estimate on the high side. We will hear every single sound generated by that training facility, and especially at night.
Mr. Lord, can you wrap up your comments, please? Unless
again.
someone wanted to give you some of their time.
Say again?
I said, can you wrap up your comments, please, unless someone wanted to give you some of their time?
Well, my wife was going to come and speak, so I'd like to have her time. She was unable to be here. Is that okay?
Well, usually they're physically in the room. Okay, if it's short.
All right. If this petition for an IUP is allowed to go through in some amended form, I would strongly support the following recommendations made by the planning staff. Immediate review and cancellation if there are sustainable complaints from the neighbors. Mandatory 1-year review, and if need be, a public hearing on the matter. And number 3, an IUP will expire in 2 years, and petitioner will be able to reapply for another IUP with the same terms. This brings about a system of checks and balances. It actually gives the neighbors something to work with if this doesn't work out and it becomes an irritation. And I think a lot of this rhetoric this morning certainly could have been avoided if I realized that COVID was out there, but if the neighbors were allowed to be at the Planning Commission meeting and voice their concerns on equal footing with the courtesies and opportunities afforded the larges, I think a lot of this could have been straightened out.
All right, do you want to,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Keisha?
Next, we have Errol Peterson of Elk River.
My name is Errol Peterson, 15316 County Road 79. I'd like to thank you for adjusting this meeting to let us to speak to you. Thank you very much for that. And I guess my concerns are a lot of what was just spoken, the noise and the traffic. And I was in the Army, and I went through military boot camp, and there was guys that were hauled off in ambulance, broken legs. One guy went off with a bayonet stuck in his eye. I don't know if any weapons are going to be allowed at this activity. Maybe so, maybe not. I don't see anything that addresses that. So, yeah, there's a lot of possibilities for injuries in this stuff. And like you said, there was no supervision on the site. They're kind of on their own. They figure everybody's got a cell phone and they're going to save themselves. So the spectators was an issue that was talked about, and they say there's not going to be any for now. And also, everybody seems to have a dog now, and I don't see anything that addresses dogs going with these people as they do their thing out there. So another thing, when I started getting involved in this, the Planning Commission told me that their biggest concern was the neighbors. And I looked at this video when the Planning Commission was there, and most of the input was negative, don't approve it. But now it's gone ahead and been approved. So I'm kind of concerned about, was that just lip service that the neighbors are the biggest concern? Maybe it was. That's all I got.
Thank you. Next, we have Sylvia Stadden of Oak River.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm one who has made the request that perhaps the form letters that are sent out be rewritten so that it doesn't say that the applicant will not appear in person and the applicant can appear in person. One of those things. I'm Sylvia Stadden. David and I have a farm, which the large property adjoins. Our property is east of their field, although information in the online minutes suggests we are located northwest of their property. We're not. We do not feel that the area zoned general rural should include a commercial business. In this case, they appear to initially want to create an outdoor fitness activity area with future ideas of actually becoming an entertainment area. When an exception is made to allow a commercial business in a general rural area, which would normally be developed as residential, it seemed that the business would be of significant benefit to the neighboring properties. We do not see that condition existing with this application request. When neighboring landowners might choose to sell their acreages, perhaps for residential development, the nearby commercial business will not sound like an asset to the quiet, peaceful country living the new residents will be desiring in our area. Being realistic, a competitive activity group is likely not going to be a quiet happening. Sound does carry more than a few feet or yards. Our neighborhood has been very fortunate that the surrounding area has been given consideration when noisier gatherings have occurred. We all have realized a nearby neighbor may be having a special event, but we knew it would be short-lived for that day or evening. Living in the country has been chosen by the home and landowners in our area because of the anticipated peacefulness of the surroundings. That peacefulness is a significant asset of our properties. Several of the neighboring owners have had significant experiences dealing with activities and competitions. They are not expecting these to remain quiet events. There does not seem to be an acceptance of oversight and supervision of this activity proposal by those requesting the IUP. While online registration and payment would certainly be efficient for their business, it doesn't appear to limit abuse of the guidelines. In today's world, it has become more difficult and perhaps impractical to be trusting. The laxity of supervision would likely bring challenges to the rules. Yes, signs can be positioned and rules can be posted. We all wish that would be sufficient direction for positive human behavior. Life experience has shown that is not the case.
Can
The
you,
dream which the
back your-
applicants have with this IUP would seem to be more appropriately developed over the years in an area where businesses can be established and expanded without negatively impacting the neighborhood. Their dream should not diminish the reality of the neighbors' lifestyles and future land use. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else?
That is all, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Okay. Any further questions for the staff? Hearing none, then I'd be looking for the, did you have one?
One quick question, Madam Chair. Can I get the total parcel size again? I'm sorry, I'm working from a really small screen today. I forgot my laptop. 114. I remember it being over 100, if I'm correct, 100
I
acres.
thought it was 112.
How big is it, Mark? It doesn't have it on here.
I think it's
112.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any further questions? Hearing none, then, what are the wishes of the board? You're saying, Tim, that if we choose to send it back, that would be the applicant's discretion, because we'd be able to make the one planning commission, but we would have to have a special meeting in order to get in within the 60 days, unless they agreed to an extension.
Correct. If the applicant didn't agree, there's not time to go back to the planning commission and come back to a regular board meeting.
Okay.
We'd have to call a special meeting in order to,
Yeah.
if they.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
is the applicant, I was under the understanding the applicant was going to be online on WebEx.
Is the applicant online?
I am here.
Oh, there you
This
are.
is-
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Chair, perhaps you want to ask the applicant if they'd
Do you have any comments?
be open to waiving the 60.
Would you be open to waiving that 60-day limit so we can send it back to planning commission?
I would have to decline that. We are looking to just get an answer and try to move forward.
So then it looks like our choices would be to move forward with the recommendations of staff and the planning commission, or we would have to have a special meeting in order to facilitate the guidelines of the 60 days. What are the wishes?
What is the, Madam Chair, what is the IUP comes up for review? What is that language? And that language recently changed. What is that language? Can you read that?
Can you clarify that, Nancy?
Okay, so staff is recommending the following language. The interim use permit shall be valid for a period of 2 years and shall expire on December 31st, 2022. Before the end of the first year, no later than September 30th, 2021, the zoning administrator shall review the activities conducted under this permit for safety and impact on surrounding properties and for compliance with the conditions of this permit, and may recommend to the Planning Commission that it conduct a public hearing to review the permit and determine whether additional conditions are necessary to ensure the safe operation of all activities and to reduce unreasonable impacts on surrounding properties. This condition is not intended to waive any other rights or remedies available to the county, and the county reserves the right to enforce the terms of this permit, its ordinances, and other applicable law by all available means.
Did that answer your question?
Well, it does. I mean, it will come back for review. And the neighbors, we've heard them here today, but they will have the opportunity to come back at this again if it becomes what they believe it will become.
So Commissioner, we're going to review it in a year, and then it would expire in 2 years, and then they can reapply at that time if that's what that's saying.
I see our esteemed.
Bruce?
Thank you, Chair Danielowski. The other thing we could do if you want, and it's totally up to your discretion, but I think your staff could communicate with the neighbors, specifically the ones who spoke here, and maybe help them better understand the statutory basis. As you know, in statute, it says neighborhood opposition by itself is not a legal basis to deny. There is some stuff we talked about today about noise ordinances that we could help review with the neighbors so that they're better understanding this as if you approve it, it evolves during this year. And also just a little clarification on some of those things. So if the board wants, we can communicate at least why things happen the way they did in the Planning Commission, and the comment about lip service is probably a little bit, makes us all feel bad because that's not the intent, but there is some statutory requirements that have to be followed here about property rights.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Everybody's, the neighbors' comments, set those in their bucket. I have a little bit of a problem with condition number 16, as it seems I haven't seen us add this level of oversight to an IUP or any other permit like this before, and it seems burdensome to this applicant. I understand how there might be some, lack of a better term, triggering terms in the application itself is in how the applicant termed these certain things. But ultimately, if we take a look at this, these are people that own 112 acres, definition of rural isolation, asking to build what's essentially a grown-up playground. There's no heavy equipment, there's no, major dust creation, and you look at the things that we approve in the general rural area, gravel mining, other heavy equipment uses and things of that nature, and we don't put this burden on them. And I understand that there might be a little misunderstanding as far as, what type of noise is gonna be created. We limited this to 14 people in the middle of 112 acres. I got family reunions, holy cow, my son can have more friends than that over on the weekend. This is I have a tough time putting this level of burden on someone trying to do something that looks to be good and active and constructive for the community and follows the rest of the guidelines. Personally, I would approve this without 16, but I'd like everybody else's comments above and beyond that.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Has the applicant agreed to 16?
I'll let Mark speak to that. I do want to make one comment too. This is two parts. It's not just obstacle course, it's also running trails. One of the things that came up was Big Lake's comment was they wanted safety issues addressed. I'm going to put my personal opinion here. I'm not sure how you monitor or address safety issues if the applicant is never out there. He admittedly said he was not going to be on site to check and see who's coming in, who's coming out. So there was that vagueness for us that we don't normally see. We have done this on a few other IUPs in the past. One was someone was doing monster trucks, which requires, it's noisy, and that was in a neighborhood. Another one, there was a Halloween house where, we didn't really know how that was going to work, and that had an expiration date, and in the end, I think it worked out okay. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that there have been a couple where it seemed appropriate. I'll let Mark address that other question.
Yeah, and there was one other one just recently. We did an interim use permit, but a 1-year limit on that permit for a company called Shipwreck. Again, it's a mechanism we have. We do use it periodically. And I'm responding to, does the applicant agree with condition number 16? The applicant does not agree with condition number 16. They made it pretty clear. They've provided some communications. I think Bruce sent out an additional email from them. They object to it primarily because they feel that it's an onerous condition that would impact their business plan, how they are looking to create this business. Concerns about complaints being filed that, where's the justification? Where's that line of a complaint being filed? Does that mean they don't get their permit because they got 10 complaints filed? Staff would have to verify, look with, are the actual violations of the conditions of the permit? Tried to provide the applicant some of this information, but it was all kind of somewhat of a crunch in time. But the applicant does not support condition number 16. It came from Planning Commission, 2-year review. Staff expressed concern at the public hearing that we didn't feel that that was quite clear enough, and we even recommended maybe working with council to make sure we have a good condition that's enforceable. And that's where we landed with this condition. So they don't agree. And I also wanted to make sure that the applicant, Jim was not able to attend work obligations. He has a surgery that he has to perform. And Carrie is on the line, so she also is here. If the board has any need to address her, if she wants, or if you want her to address the board.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to be clear. So I understand staff's red line of 16. I understand what you guys were trying to do. I'm saying generally the addition of 16 prior to you guys putting comments. I know you guys had to put those in just so that that statement's clear.
And it was, I watched the meeting, and the applicant was asked a couple of times prior to this language that there was a review that was going to be in place, and they agreed to that. And I heard that a couple of times.
That's correct, yes. They didn't object to the 2-year review. They object to the idea that the permit is terminated in 2 years, having to start the process all over again, back to the township, back to the planning commission, and then eventually to the county board for final decision.
Okay, any other comments? Barb, do you have anything you want to speak to?
No, I think we've addressed the questions I've asked.
Okay. Lisa?
So you're saying at the end of 2 years, they would have to go through the entire process again from the get-go?
Yes.
With what the language here is that staff put in?
Correct.
Felix, you had another comment?
And what was the language that the planning commission?
Just
Mr. Chair.
review.
It'd be subject to a 2-year review.
Which for us is
Too vague.
pretty vague. What
Right.
do you want us to do at the end of that 2-year review if there are problems? The only option at that point is revocation, which is difficult and very time-consuming, if we're not sure about something. I don't like things quite that vague.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
one of the things the board consider, and at some point, since we're having a discussion about specific conditions, you might want to consider a motion so that there's something on the table that the board can discuss specifically. But part of the reason for this condition is the lack of specificity in the business plan itself. It becomes difficult, as Nancy said, it becomes difficult to review when we have very vague conditions because we have a very vague business plan so that we can't address specifics of what the use is going to be in those conditions. That's the difficulty staff's in. That's created by the applicant. One of the things that the board could do if we want to remove the hard termination date is try to address more specific conditions. For example, should there be supervision out there? Should there be somebody checking in? Should there be somebody on site while people are using this? Because in a sense, at least my understanding of the applicant's proposal is that they want to set up something and then essentially lease it out to fitness clubs and individuals to use for themselves and make those parties responsible. And it makes staff's enforcement difficult when you don't have a direct link to the users and the applicant. So I'm just throwing it out there as an option. You could, if we want to look at review rather than termination, the board could suggest specific conditions. And in fact, while we don't necessarily have time to go all the way back to the Planning Commission and come back to a March board meeting, you do have time to have staff. So, for example, you could discuss some specific conditions and have staff bring those back to you at your next meeting.
So we could guide staff to do that and come back at our next meeting and make that decision at that time then.
Correct. Or you could, if there's a motion, you could direct staff to bring back, sort of like we did with the Braun IUP
Okay.
on. If there is if the board is ready to make a motion, you could do that and direct staff to bring back findings and conditions along the lines of something you discuss. If you're not ready to do that, it's difficult for staff because we don't know what to bring back to you.
Okay. And I guess for myself, being this is a general rural isolation district, and I, by all means, feel that people can do with their property, but I'm also very aware of what you do, what you're doing, and how it affects the properties around you. And I think for staff, this was more of this is such an unknown request. We understand gravel pits, we understand some other entities. This is an unknown. And this is an unknown in the way the operation is even set up to run. And I think we owe it to the neighbors around to make sure that, I think I've heard they want them to be successful too, but they also do not want to be a part of having to have their enjoyment of their property put upon.
Madam Chair,
Reasoning.
how do we develop some language that, so we can move forward with this. I'm okay with moving forward with this. I would like to see number 16 worked with some, and I don't know exactly how to do this.
So,
And just for a historical perspective, I just want to say a couple of things here. I've been around too long. Most of the people will agree with that. But when I first came on this board, we had one option, and that was a conditional use permit. Something like this would have been done with a conditional use permit that would have gone onto the property, and we would have had no opportunity to review it. So I know it seems like we're moving forward on something that might be harmful to you, but we have opportunities to remedy this if that does turn out to be the case, where we didn't have that 12, 14 years ago. So,
Thank you for those comments.
Madam Chair, your county attorney has some suggestions that with the consensus of the board, we can go back, and I think it's along the line of Commissioner Schmiesing's thoughts about modifying condition 16, maybe to take out a hard validity period and replace it. So Tim, do you want to jump in?
You could, it's the wishes of the board, you could table this to your next meeting. You could direct staff to, as Bruce said, soften condition 16. I think it would be helpful to direct, if you want staff to come back with conditions so that we have something to actually review. Do you want us to consider, for example, do you want to consider limited hours? Do you want to consider some type of supervision, check-in, check-out, something like that at the business? If you could give staff direction on that, then we can come back at your next meeting with some language that it sounds like the board would like to see.
Yeah, and I think there is some limited hours that were put on the obstacle course. There were no limited hours that were put on the running course. That is a 24/7 opportunity to go out and run. I did have an opportunity to drive out there and look at the area and stuff, and I think anybody that's running at night is just kind of taking their life in their own hands, because you're going to run into a lot of things, but that's just my personal opinion.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Actually, that is what he requested initially. The Planning Commission didn't approve that. There was a limit from dawn to dusk for running too.
For running too,
Yeah.
then, so the whole thing is dawn to dusk?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I misunderstood that.
The other thing we could nuance for the board is the idea of special events. You know, if you feel like, okay, generally, online check-in and low use is allowed, but for any special events that requires a separate permit or process, that might be your trigger for on-site supervision, additional safety. You think about large events, like if there was a 24-hour Ironman run, they would have to come back in some process to get that approved. That would not be approved under the IUP. That might have in the future spectators, potential medical issues, things like that.
And I think that was clear to the applicant. That
That's
they
a
understood
separate,
that.
that's a whole separate permit.
Yes. What are the wishes of the board? Yes.
Maybe this is too simplified, but for me, the biggest issue is sentence number 1 in 16. And if that could just be removed, and it says before the end of the first year, no later than September 30th, the zoning administrator shall review the activities. That would work for me.
So we were debating that here. I think if that's the direction of the board, to take out the revocation of the, or not revocation, but the termination of the IUP automatically, we would still have to nuance a few things in this, because it does talk about additional conditions being added if needed. So Tim would have to see whether or not you can issue an IUP without a termination and have as a condition of that IUP the ability to amend the IUP. You following me? So if that's the will of the board, I think your concept is there, but I wouldn't suggest you approve it just today with just taking out the first sentence.
So you'd be suggesting we table this?
If the direction of the board is the way Commissioner Phobie articulated it, you could say, we want to revise 16, we'll table this to the next board meeting. Staff work on language on 16 that does not have an automatic termination, but allows for staff review and potential additional conditions if needed. Or, on the flip, if we can't add conditions, grounds for revocation.
Okay, what are the wishes of the board?
Okay, we have to be, if we have a motion to table, we're done discussing.
Correct.
Okay, so I mean, I think we all need to be
Consensus of the board first,
pretty,
yeah.
pretty clear in consensus that that is what we want to happen before that.
Madam Chair, and before we get to that, again, I can't help feel but that we are micromanaging and overthinking this thing. You know, I'm looking at it from a business standpoint, and we're asking businesses to come and, you know, start a business in our community, and then we're telling them in 2 years, we could switch up your business plan and you have all this money invested, and now we review it and we decide to add all these other conditions and these expenses. The spirit of these is to, you know, spell out our conditions, and those are the conditions we enforce. We don't go back and actively review. I understand that there's some extenuating circumstances where the general public, you know, we use monster trucks and another example that we'd had problems with in the past with Shipwrecked, and we'd had problems there before, so that's why that was added. I get that, but to me, telling a business in 2 years we're going to come back and decide whether your investment here in your business model works and we might pull the plug, if I'm this business owner, I say hard pass. And that's something we got to look at. You know, if we set out 15 conditions, says the amount of people they can have, says the hours they can operate, says that they need to follow the general guidelines with excessive noise, glare, odors, traffic. And if there's complaints, we investigate those like any other application that would be in that case. This just seems like we're very much micromanaging and overthinking this type of thing. Again, to me, it's a grown-up playground with 14 adults on a private property that we have no liability. It's their job to insure it. They're taking their health and fitness into their own hands. That's my 2 cents.
So Chair, I would concur with Tim. And that's why I'm having a hard time coming up with added parameters. I feel like they're in there. They're in there for me. They're covered with the IUP. So that's why I'm struggling.
So from a parliamentary standpoint, if there's 2 of you, you can choose to move today, right now, to approve the IUP with the conditions as recommended by the Planning Commission. That takes away all the red stuff. If there's a second, then it's on the table for more detailed discussion.
Madam Chair, I'd move approval of the application with the conditions outlined by the Planning Commission with the removal of item number 16. Completely.
Okay. So then you're saying Planning Commission without 16, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and there's a second. Any further discussion?
So that, Madam Chair, so that would eliminate the 2-year review.
Correct. And if they're,
But if they are not, that removes the 2-year
He
review.
removes 16 totally in his motion.
correct.
So he wants that gone.
So you removed IUP will be subject to a 2-year
Right.
review.
He
Under
reviewed it,
16.
he removed it totally and you seconded it.
And I think if I understood Commissioner Dolan's logic, the idea would be if there's complaints, they would be investigated like all other IUP complaints.
And that the first 15 conditions should cover any complaints that would.
Correct. And not following any of those 15 conditions would be grounds for revocation of an IUP.
My second stands.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Aye. That motion carries 4-1. All right, thank you. Okay, moving on. We are on to consider approval of the preliminary and final simple plat for Highland Farms, 3rd edition, Headwater Homes LLC. Nancy?
This is 2 lots in Baldwin Township in the General Rural District. Planning Commission recommended approval with the 2 conditions that are listed in your packet.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Phobie,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Dolan. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Okay, moving on to consider the amending of zoning ordinance 249, section 16.2, interim use permits, subsection 5.8, 8.3, conditions on contractors' yards. Nancy?
I'm going to let Mark address this one. You worked
Okay,
on that.
Mark?
Commissioners, we are looking to follow up on the recommendation of Sherburne County Planning Commission to amend Sherburne County zoning ordinance, section 249, section 16.2, interim use permits for contractors' yards. And what we're looking at doing is we're looking to make an amendment to the large contractors' yards definition, which are only permitted in our industrial and heavy industrial area. The previous ordinance had a stipulation that said no more than 30 commercially licensed vehicles could be on site. With the varying size of commercial and industrial lots in Sherburne County, this was an onerous condition and actually may prevent businesses from coming into Sherburne County. And we're looking for the removal of the limitation on the number of commercially licensed vehicles and employees that could use a site. These sites still have to be reviewed and get an interim use permit to make sure that they can comply with setbacks, stormwater, screening requirements, but no longer is there just a base standard that says you cannot have more than 30 vehicles on a property. So I'm looking for a recommendation on that.
All right. Any questions? Otherwise, I'd be looking for a recommendation on approval of considering the amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Dolan,
Madam Chair, I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Smeezing. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to compliment staff on removing this. I've talked to numerous businesses where that vehicle issue has come into play, and I think it's smart to remove it and address it on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Moving on to the Rum River Comprehensive Water Management Plan Joint Powers Agreement. Bruce?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I think County Attorney will do some introductory comments. We also have on WebEx Dan Sibilka from the Soil and Water Conservation District. So thank you for giving us time to discuss this.
Hey, Nancy.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, this is a consideration for a joint powers agreement that was drafted amongst a number of counties and soil and water conservation districts, as well as one water management district. It was actually approved by all the attorneys, which in and of itself is, I would like to say, is kind of unique. Anyway, in this particular case, what happens is that the state is now flowing through their money through what they call the One Watershed, One Plan, which I'm sure Dan has told you before. And this would facilitate this. It was a balancing act between having that joint group together so we can limit the liability and the flow back to the counties, and still trying to have that input on the local level to be able to have that collaboration and cooperation going forward. I don't know if Dan wishes to add anything. I would note for you that there are no taxing authority with this entity, and there's no employees. That there would be monies that would flow back, which would allow a coordinator to be utilized. And there is also a budgetary process so that it's completely open and transparent to all of the entities that are part of this joint powers agreement. So I don't know if Dan had anything else or the commissioner had anything else.
Madam Chair, we asked for this. Now we got it.
My thoughts exactly.
I'll move approval.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Smeezing and seconded by Commissioner Dolan. Any
Chair,
further
all I'd like to
discussion? Yes.
ask is that I just appreciate the county, Kathy's work on this and all the county attorneys. It has been a lift, and a lot of work has gone into, very thoughtful, and come to something that we can all work with. So I appreciate it so much.
Any further comments? Hearing none. All those in favor? Oh, Dan? Sorry. Dan, did you want to say something?
I apologize. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
We can
great.
see you too.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate the time to speak here. I, again, would like to echo Lisa's words to thank Kathy for her work rallying the attorneys together to put this document in place. Lisa may or may not have mentioned, but this will be discussed by the larger policy committee coming up on the 28th of this month. So if there are any small comments or questions or things that you see in this document, please forward those comments to Lisa and she could take that up with the larger group. But I have nothing else to add unless there's any questions, so thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions for Dan? Hearing none. We have a motion on the table. Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on then. Next item on the agenda is we're going to move the COVID update from Amanda down to our health board meeting. So we will now go on to commissioner correspondence. Anybody want to start?
Chair, I can start.
All right, thank you.
I've had a couple AMC Futures Planning meetings. On the 7th, we had the legislative breakfast all of us participated in. On the 12th, I helped out, assisted with the vaccination clinic. On the 13th, attended AMC Coffee and Conversation. Also the 13th, there was a MICA meeting. And on the 14th, the Board of Soil and Water met.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Smeezing. I noticed you removed your mask.
Yeah, I also attended the legislators' meeting. I had the MICA meeting, Metropolitan Emergency Services Board meeting, AMC Board of Directors meeting. I attended the newbie AMC board, although I'd be termed out if it hadn't been for the pandemic, but I figured maybe it was time I got caught up a little bit again. So I went through that, and that's all that I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Dolan, are you ready?
I apologize to the board. I'm going to have to read mine in next meeting.
Okay.
I left my laptop with my calendar and everything,
Right.
not here.
Oh, yeah, when you don't have that, you're just totally clueless as to what you did. I hear you. Commissioner Brandt.
On the 5th, after this meeting, we had a VOA meeting with applicants, and on the 7th, we had our legislative meeting, and also I went to a CAMI meeting in the afternoon, and then helped with the vaccination clinic on the 12th. That's all.
All right, thank you. I did have a unified command meeting on January 6th. Also was scheduled to have a broadband discussion with the group at the federal level, but due to situations out in Washington, that was canceled. On the 7th, attended the 2021 legislative breakfast. That turned out well. We had great participation. On the 12th, helped with the vaccination clinic. That was a positive. It was great to hear everybody's positive comments, and kudos to our staff and everybody that's involved in putting together a well-run vaccination clinic. Even though the ground is constantly shifting underneath you guys respond very well. The 13th, attended another unified command meeting. Also had the MCIU meeting, formerly known as the Gang Task Force meeting. On the 14th, I had an ATP3 meeting. At that meeting, due to losing the elected chair due to elections, I was elected the chair of that group. Also, the APO board meeting, I was elected the vice chair for that group. And in the meantime, just a lot of outreach with constituents and such. So that pretty much covered my stuff. Okay, moving on then. At this time, I would be looking to adjourn our regular meeting and open the Community Health Board meeting. So I'm looking to review and approve the January 19th Community Health Board agenda. Looking for that motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Dolan.
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Smeezing. Come on, bookends, keep up.
All right, I guess.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. So we are now looking to the community health. Amanda, are you doing a review right now, or are we doing the community
No,
health
the first
board?
thing would be the consent agenda.
Okay. Looking for a motion then to approve the community health board consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made by Commissioner Smeezing, seconded by Commissioner Hobie. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same side. That motion carries. Moving on to our regular community health board agenda. Consider appointment of new community health service administrator. Amanda.
Sorry, I'm taking off my mask and I'm just smiling, so I'll try to tone it down a little bit. Good morning.
Turn down the water.
Minnesota Statute 145A dictates that all community health boards will appoint a community health services administrator. This position serves as the lead public health official for the county as well as acts as agent of the board. I am thrilled to present to you a resolution appointing Nicole Ruhoff as our community health services administrator. You know that she came from Sherburne to Benton, where she already acted in this role. And so before I look for approval, I just wanted to note that because we're in such a unique time right now in the middle of a pandemic, Nicole and I are probably going to continue to tag team board updates, vaccine clinics, unified command. Really, I want to acquiesce that if this resolution passes, that Nicole really is in charge, and want to pass the baton her way, but at the same time, we know that COVID is taking everybody's best efforts, 40 plus hours a week, and so I remain to continue to see COVID to the end, and so it will kind of be continue to be a tag team partnership, although Nicole will still be the CHS administrator. So,
Madam Chair, be my privilege to motion approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Smeezing, seconded by Commissioner Phobie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries with claps. Yay!
There's no going back, Nicole. You're it now, so.
Welcome.
send it to MDH this afternoon and it's done.
All right, moving on to our next item, COVID-19 response. Amanda.
I already told Dan I had 6 pages of notes and he wasn't thrilled with me.
You should let Dan go first then.
I offered that, but he said he already, you want to go first?
He looks comfortable back
Yeah, he's comfortable.
He's comfortable.
Start at the end.
Start at the end.
Oh.
It's a long and winding road, I know that. I've been watching the news. So.
Right. So, yes, this week, probably more than most weeks, was an absolute whirlwind. It caused me whiplash on more than a few occasions, and it was very reminiscent of early COVID. I can't tell you how many people at the state I spoke with, how many hours this weekend and Martin Luther King Day I worked, and it was not an exaggeration to say literally by the time you got out of one meeting, you got an email update that everything you had just talked about was for naught and things had changed. So it really was a scramble to get information, to get the right information, and just to organize ourselves appropriately. So again, just kind of, if you think back to last week, which seems like a lifetime ago, on Monday we were anxiously awaiting the prioritization of 1B. You'll remember from the last board update, that was a large swath of essential workers and really kind of us awaiting our next steps on how to proceed. It included teachers as well as many of our own government center staff. So we really we're excited to get that prioritization. On Tuesday, President Trump declared his own vaccination priority for the country, including 65 and older, and those with underlying health conditions. The president says a lot of things, and so I kind of heard it and filed it in the back of my head, but sometimes things that he says don't always come to fruition, especially when there's only a week left in his administration. However, on Wednesday, we have a regularly scheduled local public health leadership call, and it got moved up 3 hours. And that often happens when our governor is going to make an announcement or there's a new executive order. So we just tune in and see what they're going to say. And at that time, the commissioner stated that the president's guidance is the new priority. The state needed to pivot and prioritize 65 and older populations, and that essentially all of our work with Priority 1B kind of went out the window at that time. And so what they also mentioned, which really threw us for a loop, is right now at the federal level, vaccine allocations are made on a per population basis. And what is likely now to occur is that vaccine allocations are going to be made on the age of your state, the overall health of your state, and then also how quickly your state is administering vaccines. So Minnesota is a relatively young and healthy state, and also if you look at the current vaccine dashboard, it states that we've only dispensed or administered about 30% of the vaccine that Minnesota has received. And that said, I want to kind of put a caveat to that the state is looking at revamping the vaccine dashboard. So I'm not sure what that will look like. So on Friday, we also had another MDH leadership call to say that the state was going to now prop up statewide vaccination sites, that there were going to be very small allocations made to these statewide these vaccination sites, and that the priority now is 65 and older, and then also Governor Walz has a strong commitment to get educators vaccinated to keep those kids in school. We were notified at that time that the St. Cloud Convention Center is going to be a site. There was a lot of back and forth on Friday with who is going to be leading that site. Vault Health right now does the testing site, and so using kind of components of that, and it wasn't until I think Friday at 8 p.m. when we received a notification for a planning meeting on Saturday to say, no, we need local public health to help us with that vaccination site, and so they're in lunch the weekend. Also, just in terms of local public health, we stand ready to help, but it's a different scheduling system than what we're used to. It's also a different vaccine. We've been dispensing the Moderna vaccine, and the allocation was with the Pfizer vaccine, and there's also kind of little to no direction from the state in terms of what the request was and how they want us to be involved, just that they need us. So several planning meetings over the weekend. And then you saw that yesterday the governor announced the 9 statewide vaccination sites. He emphasized that it is a pilot, and he also emphasized there will be very, very, very little vaccine available, certainly not anywhere close to meet the demand. Also with the vaccine that is coming in this week, that vaccine shipment will be split between 65 and older and E through 12 educators. And so the allocation for E through 12 educators will be distributed through the co-ops, the local co-op. Resources our local co-op. And I just wanted to let you know that I heard back from all of our superintendents yesterday. Most of our districts actually received less than 10 vaccination spots with that allocation. So again, when we say what's coming in as minimal, it's minimal. Sherburne also, I think I had told you, reported to this board that we have been receiving weekly shipments of vaccine. We did not get a notification to receive any shipment this week, so not too much of a surprise while the state kind of gets their ducks in a row. So wanted to let you know that we do have 400 doses of vaccine on hand, and 200 of those vaccine is reserved for second doses. So the folks that got their first dose on the 26th and the 29th, 200 are saved for them to get their second doses, actually, I think this Saturday and then next week, Tuesday. And then with our remaining 200 vaccine, we are going to have a clinic tonight. And all of the spots are filled. We swept our 1A population again for the third time for many of them. And then I think as of yesterday morning, we had 19 spots still open. So we sent it to the superintendents, and I'd say 2 minutes later, they were all full. So just want to let you know that we are moving forward with educators and 65 and older. What that looks like within that group, I have no clue. And so I've encouraged the superintendents to start thinking about prioritizing within their priority group. MDH is also obviously scrambling because when we said who first, 65 and older or E through 12 educators, because that's a really big group, they just said yes. So until something else comes out, then we're just going to do the best we can with what we got, which has really been the mantra throughout COVID. So I personally am working off the assumption that there's really no wrong move, that our number one priority is to get the vaccine out the door. And as long as we're working within those priority groups that have been identified, then we'll continue to do that. And also the state has said, get vaccine out the door within 7 days max of receiving it, which I think Sherburne has been pretty adherent to. So I just also wanted to update you that Centricare has been sitting on a considerable amount of vaccine. I have heard that they are actually standing up 4 clinics this week specific to that 65 and older population. While the state hasn't made any determinations on the prioritization within that large group, we've given feedback. We've heard it would make sense if the healthcare systems can really work with the 65 and older population and leave local public health to work on occupations. But again, I'm not quite sure where that will land. The commissioner also said that after the press release yesterday, appointments for the 9 sites will be going live today at noon. I know I have my 70-year-old parents sitting by their laptops at noon today trying to get one of those coveted sites. So, and then there's just no clear direction on what's next after this week. So we'll just kind of assist. So again, we have clinic today. We have clinic on Saturday, and we have clinic next Tuesday. And again, Saturday and next Tuesday are the second doses. And then we are sending staff, obviously, to help with the St. Cloud Convention Center site. Again, working within our capacity, and Benton and Stearns are doing the same. And then I just want to close by publicly thanking our area superintendents, Dan Bittman, Tim Trubenbach, Jeremy Schmidt, and Ben Barton. There's literally no other group in the world I would like to be charting these unnavigated waters with. They are exceptional, and I'm just very pleased to have the privilege to work with all 4 of them. So.
Thank you for that update, Amanda. And I do want to also say thank you for, I think it's important we get our 65 and up vaccinated, but I think it's very important that we get our educators vaccinated with schools starting to reopen. I think there was a good number of them in our county that did reopen today for the K through 5. And I think it's important that we get those vaccinations into the teachers' arms as quickly as we can. So thank you for recognizing that, and hopefully the state can cooperate with getting us some of those vaccines to accomplish that. So thank you very much for your hard work and efforts with ground underneath you that is no different than what I would assume quicksand would be.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll just add that I think it's most important that we get the vaccine into the people that are most threatened with death, and that's the 65 over population, not the 35-year-old teacher. So, I mean, there is different perspectives on all of this, so we should be careful that we try to stay in balance with that as a board. And by saying that, I don't want to start a discussion among this board that direction. In fact, I do want to say that I have been appalled at what I've heard from our president, our governor, the shots that have been taken, the political positioning, posturing that has gone on. And really, all we want to do is get those shots in people's arms. And I'm very disappointed in our leadership in both parties in where we are. And I don't want that to happen in this boardroom.
Yeah. And I think that we've proven that when you give us the tools and the vaccine, we definitely do know how to respond. So I think that's great.
Sure. And I think I concur with what you're saying, Felix, and I really respect in this board that we work real hard not to be that way with each other. There's discussions we can have, and I think the challenge is the minute 65 plus was mentioned, my phone started ringing off the hook. When can I get it, where, and how? And to be realistic, I heard someone this morning from the State Department say 65 plus, and the way that we're getting the vaccinations or the limited amount right now means we'll be well into summer before all 65 plus are vaccinated and educators.
Yep.
So we need to check our expectations at the door, even though we're hearing this in the newspapers and on the radio. When it all comes together, we're still a long ways out. So, and that's what I just have talked a lot of people into. I've talked a lot of how to get on their computer and try to get a appointment, but it is going to be tough. So, yeah, it's a challenge, and I really appreciate how you're navigating it. So,
Well, and I think that's what we all need to remember is we have a complete lack of clarity.
Yeah.
From the federal and the state. We have no picture of what is going to happen in the future. I mean, we just don't. So I think that's why we got to be careful that we work together as our team and do what public health has done here so well. I mean, we've been leaders in terms of getting this vaccine out, no matter where it goes, following the rules that have been set for them. So I think we just need to recognize that. We need to ask that they continue to do that. And then I think we really need to expect our leaders to put aside the politics, give us some clarity, and get this thing moving.
Yes. They should definitely look at Sherburne County and take our example and go with it. All right. Thank you. Okay, then next we have,
Dan's going to do a quick business update for you on the COVID.
yep. That would be that nice handout that you gave us, Dan?
Yeah, and I just want to give you an update on where we are at with the applications. So far, we've just received about 94 applications in the 2.5 weeks the program's been active. 52 have already been approved for about $375,000 out the door. If you recall, we did get almost 1.9 million. So that indicates we will have a round two. It takes a lot of $5,000 and $10,000 applications to get up to 1.9 million. So we probably will have a round two, and on February 2nd when we meet next, hopefully we'll have some kind of recommendations for you. Or if you have any recommendations you want included, be sure to reach out. But we have rejected 23 applications, and the reasons for those are 9 were home-based. And this first round, we did have a requirement that they have a commercial location in Sherburne County. And 12 of the rejection or denials were actually where the revenues were up for November, December 20 versus 2019. We've also had some from another county apply, which obviously they would not be eligible for Sherburne County grants. We also have 19 that are still in the process. 10 came in this weekend, and then 9 that I was still waiting on paperwork over the last couple weeks. So that's kind of where we are with the applications. I did give a list of where we were up to the minute. You'll see there's week 3 on here. I'm still adding to that. I have up until 2 o'clock today to add. Then I have to get it to the auditor's office, so I hope to have even more on there for week 3 to get more money out the door. But I just want to give you a quick update and then answer any questions that you guys might have.
Dan, on this list, how many roughly are totally new and did not apply for the first round of stimulus money we had?
Probably a third.
Oh, that's okay.
A third to a half in that ballpark.
Okay, that's good to see.
And I am finding that not many qualified for the Tier 1. They did not get the state money, so a lot of them are falling into our Tier 2 program.
Okay.
I think we had 15 that qualified for our Tier 1 out of the 52 that have been approved. So,
Madam Chair, I'll add to that too. Basically, what I've seen is unless it was a business that purposely just kept their doors shut, not many of them are meeting that Tier 1 standard. There's not a ton of them in our community that are collecting that Tier 1 straight from the state. So,
okay. Any other questions for Dan? Well, thank you, Dan, for all your hard work on this. At some point, hopefully, right, we'll, although we're very happy to be able to get out any monies that come to us to get out into our business community by all means.
It is needed, and
Yes.
and they are very thankful for it.
Yes, yeah. No, I've heard from many of them. It is truly, truly an amazing, to hear just the plain thank you. I mean, it's like you're sending me a lifeline. And that is what we want to make sure everybody gets through this in our county.
Madam Chair, fortunately, they're open again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's the best thing that can happen here.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dan, for that update. Okay. So that pretty much then looks like it concludes our agenda for our health board meeting. We received the CHS administrator's report, so we're good with that. Okay, with that being said then, I would close our community health board meeting, and seeing no other business that would be coming before us at our county board meeting, I would then adjourn our county board meeting, and we will be going into workshop after about a 10-minute break.
Perfect.